Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's been a little while without some news, without some rosters, but as always, the COD scene never disappoints, and with it comes a story from ENVOY. He was on the flank just a day ago, and he went through and he basically talked about a ton of the culture problems that happened at OpTic. And it seems like every time we're going into a major, we're asking ourselves the questions. OpTic has the talent to compete. Will this be the major where it happens? And eventually at the end of the season, basically every season, we end up getting these excuses in terms of why they don't end up producing. And in today, we have 3 video clips to go through. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. But for those that are wondering why OpTic has not been performing the last couple years, it's because they have these cultural issues around their organization. When you have teams like the Atlanta FaZe that have a head coach, an assistant coach, an analyst, an S&D coach, and you know every time they're playing a game, can you imagine after Atlanta FaZe lost to Seattle Surge in the Stage 5 major? Could you imagine them just being, all right, we're going to chalk it up. We're just going to go to champs and see what happens? No, I guarantee you they watched every single one of those VODs over and over again, and that's what those top teams do. So let's go ahead. Let's get into our first video. Again, there are 3 of them, so we're going to talk about them all. But again, the first one starts here. We'll go ahead and we'll listen to it, and then we'll break it down. Let's go ahead. Let's press play.
You know,
I chalked a lot of scrims last year because teammates did not sleep. Not even go to sleep, or went to sleep at 5 a.m. and then I'm an hour late, or I'm chalking the whole first set. You're chalking both sets, and
that's annoying.
It's just so important to have like good habits. You know, have a healthy lifestyle. Because, bro, end of the day, like it's not just on like you're not doing it to yourself. You're doing it to like your whole team.
Your teammates.
You know?
Yeah, your teammates.
I understand it when it's like a newer player, right, Tom? Like Celium, you know, like we had to kind of deal with that a little bit, but that was like literally the first team I've ever been on, so fine, I understand that. But like when there are players that have been in the league for like 3 or 4 years, you know, I find that to be kind of unacceptable.
But Celium is also a sponge. You tell that kid one thing and it's fixed instantly. Like even
and a lot
in
of
game
players are like that.
Like I just remember when we first, you know.
All right, so first video there, and I agree with what Ben said towards the end there that, okay, a new player, maybe coming from the AM scene, he might not be entirely up to speed on how things go. You have to be there, you have to be at scrims, you have to make sure you're waking up on time, going to bed early, all that good stuff. But when you have it happen years after years after years in a row, you could hear the frustration in ENVOY's voice right there. And if you were following the chat, I mean, everybody knows who he's talking about, right? So obviously this was about Dashy, and I just feel like how many chances is this guy going to get? He is no doubt about it, one of the most talented players in the world, but you're probably not going to win with him. He talks about how players wouldn't sleep. Well, I mean, we kind of know who that is. They had bad habits and just wouldn't get any rest. So if you did have scrims the next day, not only have you probably not gotten a ton of sleep the night before, but you're going into those scrims, and how on top of the ball are you really going to be if you haven't already been up, had food, you know, gotten your mind in the right set, all of those things. And towards the latter half of that, how he talked about how there were times where they would have to basically just chalk the first scrim and maybe have one a day, or there were times when the entire day would be chalked. And I just feel like this is the same story over and over again, right? Time and time again, we're hearing the same thing about Dashy in particular and what his habits are like. You know, go to bed early, wake up, have breakfast, take this seriously. And on a whole, maybe I'll make a video on this at a different point in time. But with all the money involved in competitive Call of Duty right now, I'm kind of surprised that it's even still ran this way. The fact that somebody could show up late. I mean, imagine if you want esports to be taken seriously and they have contracts and trading and a lot of money and millions of dollars for these squads. I mean, imagine somebody for an NFL team or an NBA team just showing up late. No, you get suspended, you get fined, there are consequences. In this, it's just like they're still playing at an apartment somewhere, and if they show up, great. I don't know. It absolutely drives me crazy. The way that these orgs are ran, I just don't get it. But we do still have 2 more videos to talk through. So let's go ahead and let's get into our second one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
You two doing? Just fucking
Yes.
chilling? Just
Same thing, man. Like I pretty much did that this year. I think like all of us did with like the with the no streaming thing. But like we literally stopped streaming and got worse. It didn't make any sense. We cared less, got worse, and it was probably the worst thing for the of the year.
Hear this shit?
Yeah.
I can't believe it over there.
Jesus.
The OpTic
Yeah,
Jesus
dude, we were in
Christ.
shambles, bro.
Who specifically cared less, if you don't mind me asking?
All right,
Dude,
Back to
I'm not gonna put
challengers
it on
with
one
you, man.
person. It's everyone, dude. It was everyone. All right?
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So a couple things I want to take over there. So first of all, I love Zinni, you know, like trying to like, who was it specifically? Like, go ahead, name names. Let's go ahead. Let's get some people out there. I love that approach to it. And obviously it's a joke. But towards the end of that, if you go back through and you listen to it again, even though Zinni was joking around, again, you could hear Envoy's frustrations because like they started to joke around a little bit and he reiterated the point and he touched on it again. And I can totally see how that would happen, right? Because think about it. If you're Scump, if you're Formal, and I'm not calling necessarily any one of them out in particular, but just as a whole, if you know that every day you're going to be streaming your scrims, then it's going to keep you to the schedule that you're on. So if it's Scump or if it's Formal and they know they have an obligation to stream and there are people waiting for them and Dashy shows up late, now all of a sudden they're going to take that personally because that's in a way affecting what's happening on their Twitch channels. But if that just goes away, and then now Dashy misses or sleeps in late or isn't there or whatever, it's just like, all right, whatever. Well, we don't have any obligations to any Twitch audience or anything. So, all right, I guess we'll miss this one. We'll play again tomorrow or whatever. So it makes 1,000%. It just makes sense why they didn't perform last year and what Envoy is saying. We do have one more clip. Let's go through. Let's watch this last clip, and then we'll go through, we'll talk about it all as a whole and what OpTic has to do moving forward if they kind of want to change this around a bit.
Last year. So Envoy, I guess last year, what were some of the problems that you guys ran into? I mean, for me, from the outside looking in, it's just a lot of just like little plays, like a lot of teamwork shit. But coming from you, like, what do you think?
I think generally speaking, we had very bad teamwork, super inconsistent. To add on that, like I mentioned, like Draws really having a lot of passion. I think we didn't have enough passion this year from all of us, myself included. I'm not throwing that on anyone specific, but I think a lot of daggers too, bro. We lost in a lot of shitty ways, and like you lose hope after a while. Like going into champs, even with COVID, it's like, dude, can we play?
Yeah,
you know?
that
like,
must have been scary as fuck. Like the COVID shit.
Yeah, like Matt and Bruce are getting on. Like, dude, is this practice even worth it? Like, I'm gonna have to scrim with, or I'm gonna have to play with Troy and Jordan. You know, like next week.
Yeah.
Like that. The loss of hope was like the hardest thing throughout the
last year.
All right. So with this one, it's a longer clip. I do think that there's a ton to unpack here. But first, and it wasn't necessarily touched on in either of these three videos, but there was some reports out there and some things said about how really this squad wouldn't even really watch VODs. So they would play their scrims and they would maybe pick up on a lot of what went wrong, maybe while the scrim was going on, or they would touch on it afterwards. But there really wasn't a point in time where they would come together at the Hex quarters or anywhere else. I mean, it doesn't really even matter where it's at, where they would come together, they would watch a VOD, they would say, you know, why are you going here? Why is this happening? And you wonder why at the end of the year, Stage 5 Major and at Champs, they're getting absolutely blown out and obliterated in S&D. I mean, it's pretty clear where those things are coming from. So Envoy would say they had just bad teamwork. And of course you're going to have bad teamwork when you're not going over these things with a fine-tooth comb and really bringing up the minimap and breaking it down and analyzing these situations and these scenarios that are happening. He says there was no passion. And for me, that's just inexcusable. But again, when it comes to competitive Call of Duty, who is holding these people accountable, right? I mean, they're showing up late, not being there. So is there going to be passion when you're not really being held accountable? There should be. I can tell you right now that I guarantee, I promise you, and I know I've referenced this earlier, that when the Atlanta FaZe lost to the Seattle Surge and Simp went home and Abizi went home and Celium went home, I guarantee there was some passion there. I promise you they cared. They watched VODs. They had a heart-to-heart. You can just tell who does that naturally and who doesn't, and I get it. The last thing he said, or at least one of the major points he touched on, was how they had a ton of heartbreaks throughout the year. And they did. You can think back to a million different things that happened throughout the year. Most notably was probably Accuracy's 1v3 in that map 5 round 11 where they ended up losing to the Minnesota Rocker. Things like that happened basically tournament in and tournament out. But still, a lot of those happened just because they weren't playing the game properly. So for example, that really should have been a 1v4 instead of a 1v3. The only reason why Accuracy in that very specific instance was even in a 1v3 was because Envoy went rogue and pushed him back lobby when he shouldn't have. Like, if he goes rogue and makes that play, everybody's cheering, great. It's the end of that match and they're moving on. But if he doesn't get that kill, then you're just putting your teammates in a potential scenario, even though it has as small of a chance of happening as it did. Still put your teammates in that chance. They end up getting basically 1v4'd, and the rest of it is history. So, look, I totally get it. I know there are gazillion OpTic fans out there. I know a lot of you probably watch this channel also. And I know it's tough to come down on them, especially when you want to see them have success. But just like me and just like you, I mean, if you're fans of this organization, you should not be happy with the way things are going right now. Now, the only thing that I'll say, just to kind of close this all out, is that maybe there's a bit of change coming, and this ENVY merger could end up being really good for this OpTic brand, because you know that ENVY brand is all about winning. You know that Rambo is there, who is probably a perfect coach in this scenario, because you need someone that those really big people in the scene respect. So you need somebody that Scump will respect, that you already know that Illy and Shotzi respect Rambo. So I think that's really going to help. And the other side of that is that Shotzi is an absolute grinder. So when it comes to who they'll be playing with, you know Shotzi's going to show up. You know Illy's going to show up. Bruce is still there. So things are going to have to change. Will it? I don't know. You thought this would have been the year after being kicked from his previous squad and then going to OGLA and then being benched for basically all the same things. And then when he gets onto OpTic this year, oh, that's all over. We're going to have rules. Hex came out and said things are going to be different. I talked to his mom and yada, yada, but it's the same thing all over again. So I don't know. Comments down below. I can't wait to have interactions on this one. I'm interested to see what you guys have to think about this. So put your comments down below. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like. And with that, thank you guys so much. We'll see you in the next upload.